So in a moment, I'm going to bring to the stage a young lady who is really a wonderful role model for people who want to take that step from working for others to working for themselves. I met Katie, we just talked 2 years ago at a networking group. And at that group, this was PTN, some of you know about it, it's Paul Arnett's group out on the west side of town, not so far from here. And I'm pretty sure that was the one, right? And in that group, like most networking groups, people stand up and they spend about 1 minute saying, here's who I am, here's my business, here's what I'm looking for, send me some referrals. And within about 15 seconds after Katie stood up, I went, holy crap, this girl is a force of nature, and I want to find a way to work with her. And as it turns out, she does video marketing, which is a medium that's very conducive to the stuff we do at JMAC, and sometimes the stuff we do around personal development. And very quickly I contacted Katie and I said, hey, what's that going to look like? What can we do? We started doing projects together. 2 years later, we've done countless projects together. Katie's one of those rare individuals who can get behind, well, she can do two things very well, at least for me. She can listen to me describe my harebrained idea for a video and pretty much understand how I want it to be shot and organized based on some kind of loose description. So I don't have to spend weeks doing a sketch or organizing it ahead of time, which is really nice. It saves me a ton of time and energy. And B, she's one of those few people that can get behind a video camera but still be articulate, step out and go, hey, you should do this, you should do that, or ask you questions. And trust me, I work with a lot of people who cannot do that. There's an epidemic in the video industry of people that get behind the camera and lose their ability to speak English. She's not one of them. Since we started working together, Katie and her husband Daniel have become family friends. We've had them over many times. They've visited us when we go to Ashkay Island, been over to our house for dinner, get along with my kid great. There's a wonderful, playful rivalry between my kid, who is 10 or now 11, and Daniel. Daniel insists that you can't game on a Mac. And Erica begs to differ, so that's fun. So without further ado, I just want to give you an opportunity to meet one of the most awesome people in my life, and once you meet Katie Curtis, you'll feel that she's probably one of the most awesome people in your life as well. Please give her a huge hero's welcome. That's a stage walk. Rock it out.
I'm used to standing behind the camera, not in front of it, so I'm not exactly sure how this is going to go, but what's the worst that could happen? When I say that, it's an honest question, because I used to take it kind of flippantly, and what's the worst that could happen? Well, I could die. Yeah, but it doesn't really matter what you do, you can always die. In this case, the worst that could happen is, Okay. Worst that could happen is I have no idea what to say, and I stand up here awkwardly. Or I start saying something, and then I forget, and then I'm still awkward and awful, and I'm making weird noises, and you guys start to look at me funny, and then you start laughing, and then you start heckling, and I feel really embarrassed, and then I leave the room crying. Well, it's actually not that bad. I mean, that would suck, but I'd survive. And it would probably be a funny story to tell later on, so, I guess I could give this a shot. And really, the things that we do, it's never as bad as we think it's going to be. I say that as the worst case scenario, but I know the room that I'm in. I've talked with you guys. I know some of you. I know you're not here. Even if I were awful and had no idea what I was saying, instead of heckling, I would probably get encouragement, or I would get somebody jumping in. And so it's really gratifying, and it allows me to stand up here and be a little vulnerable. So thank you for that. No, I like you. I see us going through our lives in two ways, and I'm going to make this a water analogy because I'm a pool construction girl at heart. And yes, I know what you're thinking, clearly, pool construction. But I think we go through life doing one of two things. Either we are entering the water very, very slowly. We're gradually getting more and more wet, entering it kind of not realizing until we look back and we see how much distance we've covered, or we feel how high the water is on us. And I think that works a lot with personal development and personal growth. And maybe you don't come to a breakthrough today. Hopefully you have, but if you don't, somewhere down the line, you will be pursuing something else and things will click. And you'll look back and you'll see, oh, look at how much distance I've covered. I didn't realize it when I was doing it, but I can see how far I've come. The other way is jumping straight into the water. And these ones I call inflection points. I'm sure John could explain this a lot better than I could. Am I too forward far enough? Hello? I'm sure he could explain it a lot better than me. But in math, when you go from a convex to a concave, and I don't know if I messed that up, there is a point where the direction switches, where you're here and now you're going here, where it's that one moment in time where everything changes. When we're kids, this happens a lot because our minds are so open and susceptible to learning that we make a lot of these inflection points. And unfortunately, one of my first ones was not a pleasant one, but it kind of helped guide me to where I am today. When I was 5 years old, I was in kindergarten, and I had a crush on a boy. I didn't have qualms about who I was. I wasn't introspective. I played with who I wanted to play with. I did what I wanted to do. If I wanted to crawl around on the floor, I did. If I wanted to tease my crush or whatever, I did. And I was a kid. That's how I experienced life. Well, one day my female friends and I were playing, and we were pretending to be dogs, and we were crawling around on the floor. And the first girl crawls up. I don't know if my crush was like our owner or something, but she crawled up to him. He patted her on the head, and she scampered off. The next girl crawled up to him, and he patted her on the head, and she ran off. So getting kind of excited, like, oh my gosh, my crush is gonna pay me attention, I crawled up and expected that contact, but instead, he ran off. So I got my first taste of rejection, and I was devastated. I don't know if that was the cementing moment, but I can't remember a time after that where I felt fully comfortable with people that I valued or respected or admired. I always felt like I was less than. There's haves and the have-nots, and for some reason I was in the have-nots. And this impacted how I lived. I wouldn't do things if I didn't think I would be good at them. So I didn't take physics or AP chemistry because I thought it would ruin my grade point. Or I was in an improv group, and we were supposed to perform at our senior all-night party, and even though I went to the practice and I did pretty well, I was so afraid of making that mistake on stage, so I quit. I was even afraid of really going headfirst into the things that I love and finding out how bad I was actually at them. And I think it's good that I'm talking in the inside stuff because it's all inside stuff. None of the outside, fully competent and whatever, but inside it wasn't the case. And so I tried to protect myself with these outward symbols of success. So being valedictorian, being a state champion, just doing all of these things and thinking that I could hide how subpar I actually was. Man, I had this, have you ever seen those Sarah McLachlan commercials where she's trying to save the one-legged puppies and the one-eyed cats, and it's so sad, and that song plays in the background? I had that on my playlist that when I was feeling particularly sad, I would listen to it and I would cry and, bemoan the universe. Because there's one line in there, spend all your time waiting for that second chance for a break that would make it okay. There's always some reason to feel not good enough. And that, unfortunately, really resonated with me. So I thought having these outward symbols of success would hide how subpar I truly was. And I thought it was working because you get compliments from your significant other, from your parents, from your friends. Oh, you're so smart. Oh, you're so pretty. Oh, how do you do that? That you think, oh yeah, I really got it all together. Meanwhile, you're kind of hurting inside. And the inflection point for me for that was after high school, I had reconnected with somebody that I had a crush on in high school. I didn't date anyone. Right there is actually my one and only. I got it right in one. But I reconnected, and we kind of were messaging, and I was curious. I kind of had a moment of ballsy, and I messaged, could we have ever gone out in high school? And nervous for the response, I waited, and the answer came back, no. But that wasn't the only answer. Coming in immediately after was, you never thought you were good enough for me. Not, you weren't good enough for me, not, you weren't smart enough, you weren't funny enough, you weren't fun enough, you weren't awesome enough. You never felt that you were good enough for me. And that hit me hard because I really liked this person in high school, and I thought maybe it could work, but it never did, and so what was I doing wrong? Well, I wasn't doing anything wrong, but I was thinking wrong. It was fully in my control the entire time. I was sabotaging myself by not believing in myself. So in recent years since then, I've, like all of you, I'm sure, pursued seminars to make me grow. I've read books, I've listened to podcasts. Anybody I find inspiring, I make excuses to hang out with them. And T. Harv Eker, I really enjoy his books, and he says, in order to change the fruits, you have to change the roots. Sometimes we think if we spray paint our apples gold, then they'll actually be golden apples, all the while forgetting to water the roots underneath. And that was where my issue was. If I wanted to really embody the successes that I had to change what was inside. And sometimes you can have this moment of an inflection point, and sometimes it's just wading into the water very slowly, making one small good decision, learning one tidbit that will help you, and gradually you can look and see how far you've come. And that is how it has been for me, but also I have gotten to experience other times where I got to jump in with both feet. One that really stands out to me, because it is so counter to everything that I had done in the past. I was at a business convention with my dad and his business partner. And in a moment of vulnerability, I confessed to her that there were these two entrepreneurs, and I told her that I felt awkward with them. I didn't feel like I was cool enough to hang out with them, and that I was nervous. And she looked at me kind of funny. Why? If you knew the truth, you wouldn't feel that way. Well, what's the truth? They look successful, they look good, they're fit, and maybe we all have inside stuff. So a little mollified, and I felt good that I had finally expressed these words out loud. Later, when we were hanging out in a big group, these entrepreneurs decided they were going to go off, meet some friends, hang out. And without waiting for them to invite me with them or to ask if I could come, I jumped up and I said, I'm coming with you. I didn't have hair done, didn't have makeup on, screw it. I'm just gonna go for it. Because why not? What is the worst that could happen? They hate hanging out with me and they never want to do it again? Well, okay. It was very empowering. I learned a lot about Portland. Keep Portland weird is definitely an appropriate motto. But it was so fun bonding with people. I'd never hung out with people like that before, the successful and the high achiever, top end. I don't know. I saw somebody who's either resuscitating himself from the dead or was tweaking. I saw the cool tent cities of Portland. That was an inflection point, because from then on I wasn't as scared, because I had that win under my belt, that I did something that I was afraid of. I hung out with people who I at first didn't think I was good enough to hang out with, and it went well. So again, more decisions, more growing. I mentioned pool construction. I worked with my dad and his business partner for 3 years out of college. I learned a lot of great life skills, how to use power tools and lift wheelbarrows, and got good tan lines. But I'm sure many of you in the room, I enjoyed what I was doing, I enjoyed the people I was with, but I didn't have the freedom to do what I wanted. I had to be where they wanted me to be for as long as they wanted me to be. And maybe I like to make cinder block walls, but I don't necessarily like to dig trenches, but you kind of got to do all of those things. And I wanted something a little bit different. And so I did video work on the side, but I found that for me, I was tired after I came home, spending all day in the sun, lifting heavy things. I didn't want to work again. Even though this was my dream, I just was not inspired. And clarity came one day when I was scooping leaves out of a pool, and I had all these ideas for the podcast I wanted to do, and the videos I wanted to make, and how I was going to do all this, and I was super excited and super pumped. But then I realized that all of this was going to go away as soon as I got home. I wasn't going to do any of this, and I could be as inspired as I was now, but it wasn't translating because this had happened before. So I decided to quit. And January 1st, 2017, I was full-time doing video. I didn't have enough clients to make it worth it right out of the gate. I don't even know if I had my media presences intact. I didn't even have a name, but it was time to go for it. Because what's the worst that could happen? Well, the worst that could happen would be if I had no idea what I was doing and maybe I broke something on a shoot, maybe I did a completely awful job, or my SD cards broke, or I made something and the client told me that it was absolutely awful, and maybe they screamed at me and they were going to tell all their friends what a bad person I was. Okay, that would be, pretty yucky, but could I get better? Yes. Could I learn some more things? Yes. Could I take things from that experience? Could I find new customers? Yeah. Okay. Maybe I could do this. Well, you see me up here, and I got my cameras, and 2 years later, I can say that the worst thing never did happen. I did have some people tell me to my face that I was bad and they would never recommend me, but I actually kind of forgot about that while I was writing this, and only snapped into my head that I had like a second rejection story to share. So it goes to show how important, that is now, once you get yourself kind of sorted, because what do their opinions mean to me? They don't. So that's, it's crazy what you can do when you figure out who you are inside. Oh, and I wanted to circle around and back. Again, another thing that I didn't figure out until I was kind of mind mapping this in my head. But before I even know, you've probably seen my husband coming around snapping pictures, maybe you've chatted with him. Before I knew who he was, before I even knew his name, we were playing flag football for ROTC PT, and he ran up to me unannounced, unbidden, patted me on the head, and ran off. So sometimes you do get what you want. I think that's what I got.